The year was 1990 and the country was on the edge. The clamor for multi-party democracy and constitutional reforms had hit fever pitch. A section of the clergy had joined forces with firebrand politicians, maverick academics, lawyers and civil society groups with the backing of the international community, united in seeking to force the government of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi to repeal Section 2A of the Independence Constitution to open doors for a return to multi-party democracy. Among the outspoken clergy was ACK Bishop of the Eldoret Diocese, Alexander Kipsang Muge. The cleric would later perish in a dreadful road accident a few days after being threatened by a government minister. Many concluded that the bishop's death an outright political assassination by the government. To date, successive governments have never made public how exactly the accident happened to rule out any foul play. This is NTV Presents Bishop Alexander Muge, the ultimate prize. My name is Duncan Haemba. The late Bishop Alexander Kipsang Muge, who had trained as a GSU officer before exchanging the gun for the Bible and the cross, was consecrated as the first bishop of then newly created ACK Diocese of Eldoret at the age of 35. His enthronement on 5th June 1983 coincided with the tense aftermath of the 1982 attempted coup 10 months earlier. But Bishop Muge, an avowed advocate of good governance and accountability, was not cowed by the crackdown.
I don't remember very well, but he worked for the military before he became a clergyman. So he was very militant by nature. It was in his blood. And he was very, we were very aggressive and he was very aggressive. That's how he risked his life. Because of his ideology on new constitution and multi-party, Okodo said he should not go to Busia. I said, if you go there, you won't come back. And he didn't come back. And what I'm trying to tell you is that his sermons were very bold.
After the coup, there was a systematic alienation of one community that Moi thought had actually organized that coup. That is the basis of it all. So Muge, in his own approach, began by defending the people that were being isolated then by his community.
Every Monday at Sirikwa Hotel, to pray with him and plan our next sermons, what to say next. We worked in concert. Okuru used, when he comes to Nairobi, we also meet. All these people, we used to now work in a concert, ideologically, and in concert to bring a new constitution where a participatory multi-party democracy.
He was challenging the system, of course, having learned that from our interaction, earlier. And he became so vocal. Mind you, when you become vocal, trying to challenge your own clan and the people that you are associating with and the people you have interacted with, and cunningly they have put you under their ghetto, then to emerge from that particular cocoon and be able to challenge the things that you know, and they know you know them. That is the most dangerous thing for anybody. And I believe because he was very inquisitive in so many ways, and very outspoken when he spoke his mind. He could analyze his sermon so nicely and coin it in a way that is challenging you directly for That was again his gift. And I am sure people, the authority then, or even the powers that were behind the president at that particular time, must have accused him to the big man or the system, and they must have worked a system to annihilate him.
To silence him,
Dr. Christopher Ruto is the current bishop of ACK Eldoret Diocese, a fourth after the late Bishop Muge.
He served the region, which at that time was also served by the head of state, Daniel Arap Moi. And among the most notorious areas in this region was West Pokot, which was under the same diocese. West Pokot at that time were being disarmed, and some of the ways of disarming people were so violent and cruel. And Bishop Muge happened to have been obviously serving those Christians. In terms of political voices, nobody was allowed to speak another voice other than the voice that probably the establishment had then want to hear. And Bishop Muge would not probably like that kind of compromise. He would want the truth to be spoken, whether it is matters to do with West Pokot or matters in Nandi, areas of Mosop, where there was a very, very abrasive politician by the name of Stanley Meto, among a few others, who was very loyal to the head of state, but sometimes also not doing very well in terms of serving the people of Mosop, dividing people and doing some arrests, which sometimes were very illegal for people he perceived were opposing him. So they always also perceived Bishop Muge as preparing some political figures.
Yes. We all knew that his time, his life was in danger. He told us over the phone, and when we interacted, he would tell you, brother, my life is in danger, because he knew. He must have been a thorn in the flesh of the community that was organizing sinister things for other people. Yeah, and he hated to betray the Christians or the humanity that he served. Ascended to the preeminence, and the Kalenjin must have known that one of theirs, because he was the first Kalenjin bishop, and he was young, people knew that he had a lot of time to live for, and they knew that he could ascend to any level. Yes, he was a threat to many.
Obviously, the political games of that type, they still work also today. Sometimes outspoken voices that appear not to be in tune with the powers that be. Sometimes they look for ways of trying to trim those other alternative voices. And it happened then, during the time of Muge. At one point, he was, there were attempts to give him a piece of land in a certain place. And Bishop Muge said, okay, I agree, I'll get this land, but I want this land for the church, not for me. Give me the title, but written in the name of the church, not for me personally. So you can see, even those attempts to have him give him a car, or sometimes even money. I remember in one of the visits to Kabarak at one time, he was told, Bishop Muge, we want to work with you, and we shall support you in many of your projects, but you will need to be working very closely with the powers that be. And then Bishop Muge said, okay, I agree, we want to work together. But he said, I want to quote you a very powerful message. I will only work with you with whatever is true, whatever is just, whatever is fair, whatever is noble for the people for which we all serve together.
Ili Bwana, sisi zote tukienda tuwe na amani na imani. Hatutaki vita Mungu.
The turbulent period in Kenya persisted through the 80s and early 90s as the government intensified its clampdown on perceived dissidents, arbitrary arrests, torture in dungeons and detentions without trial, and even unexplained deaths became part of the government's arsenal in putting down opposition. But the government's strong-arm tactics only appeared to embolden dissent. The climax came in the famous Sabasaba protests on 7th July 1990, called to press for a change of the constitution to allow for more parties to take part in politics. Amid tight restrictions on social and political gatherings, Sunday worship provided a section of the clergy with a free pass to speak to large congregations without the need to obtain a permit.
You are not a threat personally. It's the ideas which were strong, powerful, and a threat to people without ideas, with only the practitioners of dictatorship, practitioners of oppression, were very threatened to hear that they have no legitimacy. For me, I was defrocked already. You remember, I lost my collar for 2 years. You see, for me, what happened that we had already taken the church from the inside the house to the streets. We had already gone with the church to the streets. We have gone with the pulpit to the streets. So the whole Kenya was our pulpit. The media became the extension to our sermons. Now not as such, because even people like Sheikh Barara, people like Maris, Sheikh Yumagao, even Muslims, even Sheikh Abd from Garissa and Wajir. It is the whole country which was reverberating.
In the 90s, there was a lot of fear over the possibility of having other parties. And Bishop Muge, Gitari, Okulu, and others were obviously perceived to be those other voices or would influence the societies around. So too, the 90s was also a very critical year in Kenya because early that year, Dr. Ouko was killed. He was assassinated. And the circumstances of his assassination were so very grievous for the government that they were doing anything possible to cover the tracks of those probably who killed him and the reasons for his assassination. And I'm sure Bishop Muge may have been privy, together with other bishops, particularly Okulu, probably Kitare.
Labour Minister at the time, Peter Okondo, a loose-tongued KANU stalwart, publicly issued a threat to Bishop Muge, warning him against setting foot in the minister's backyard of Busia.
They had a disagreement with a few others before then. People like Biwot and other people in the lower ranks, particularly in the special branch. They had rubbed shoulders. Peter Okoto was just a stupid, outspoken character to let the cat out of the bag. He wasn't the kind of the person. He was stating, if you go, you will not come back, because he must have known. And we knew so many sinister things that were happening that particular time in the system and in the State House. The state machinery really at that time were trying to protect Moi and to show him you must acquire power now. And they were trying to use Moi for their own benefit. So they created so many enemies for Moi without, I think, him knowing. He realized much later.
That was a week that he had been threatened, that if he steps in Katakwa, an area that the House of Bishops had allocated him to serve beside Eldoret in order to deal with the challenges that were arising from the Christians of Katakwa, which is literally the Teso area, following the election of a bishop of Nambale a year before that. And I think because of those disagreements between the Christians of, the divisions between the Christians of Nambale diocese then, and the then Katakwa Archdeaconry. So Bishop Muge was appointed to act as a mediator.
But there was, in one of the captures in the Nation, they portrayed him like they printed Okondo in the form of a snake with a huge tongue. That tells you that he was on the conduit. He let the cat out of the bag. Nobody wanted it to happen that way. I think they wanted to kill him or to wipe him out secretly and with intricacies that will never be traced.
Okondo obviously told Bishop Muge, if you come to Katakwa, you'll not go back alive. So it is possible, and this is when the powers that were actually looking at a way of eliminating Muge found an opportunity or an opening sort of to blame later that particular minister, Okondo.
On Tuesday, 14th August 1990, a defiant Bishop Alexander Muge made good his promise and went to Busia, despite the warning from Okondo. And true to the minister's chilling threat, Bishop Muge did not get back alive. He perished in a road accident at Kipkaren River along the Webuye-Eldoret Highway, plunging the country into a state of shock and heightened tension.
A truck bumped into his car, being driven. I don't remember whether it was these things Moi used to give. I think it's a milk truck, which there was a Moi milk school program. I think it's one of the trucks which was hired to eliminate him.
At ACK St. Matthew's Cathedral, Eldoret, where the late Bishop Alexander Muge is buried, we meet Davis Omanyo, one of the survivors of that dreadful accident that claimed Muge's life. He was with Bishop Muge from early morning, drove in the same vehicle to Busia, and was next to the man of cloth when he met his tragic death.
That eventful day, I had no idea that I was going to drive with him. But I knew he wanted us to accompany him. So I left my home here, and when we were planning to be at the office around 6 o'clock, when I reached the office, he told me, "Can you give your car to somebody else? You are going to drive with me," and his 2 secretaries. So that's how I joined him during that day. And on the way, of course, we used to talk much, you know, because we were going to Busia, and I came from Busia. He sort of had somebody to converse with, to talk about the issues within Busia. And so we drove well from here. We had a nice drive. I was the one driving. I drove from here all the way as we were talking with the 2 secretaries of his. That is the late Claire Kerubo and Rhoda, who is still in the US. They were his secretaries. So we were driving along as, why 2 secretaries? Every time he was driving, was talking, and something was coming in his mind, and the secretaries would jot it down. When we reached Bungoma, we experienced that people were following us with white Land Rovers. And those days, those Land Rovers were for special branch. So when we were in Bungoma, between Bungoma and Malaba, we had a lot of those vehicles, like they were monitoring us. We overtake one, we meet another one. After a few minutes, we meet another one. So as we drove on like that, we had left the convoy, we were now alone. When we reached Malaba, we took the Malaba-Busia road. And because I know the road, I drove a little bit fast. And then when I reached Alupe, I took the shortcut. So we dodged them. They didn't know where we went. We knew these are special branch, they are following us. So Bishop was now very much aware he's being monitored. So when we reached Busia, instead of going to St. Stephen's Church, we decided to go to town. We drove to town. And then from town, many people immediately they saw him, they would come where he is. So a big crowd came in to him at Busia town. And then at Busia town, we said, let's walk to St. Stephen's. So a big crowd followed him to St. Stephen's.
On that Black Tuesday, before they hit the road, the bishop had apparently made an important telephone call on what turned to be his final day.
Either he was talking to somebody outside the country, or somebody in the country, or the Archbishop here, or the Archbishop of Canterbury, and was telling them, I'm going to Busia, and if I die, the government is responsible. Yeah, those are the words of the conversation. Yeah. So when we were going, we were aware of would be disrupted on the road.
In Busia, there was a big crisis facing ACK's newly created Diocese of Nambale that Bishop Muge was asked to resolve. A new diocese had been created in a territory whose major inhabitants were the Luhya community, and Katakwa, which was predominantly occupied by the Teso community, was threatening to break away because they felt one of their own who was more qualified was not consecrated as new bishop. There were also divisions within the house of ACK bishops. Some did not support creation of the new Nambale diocese in Western region. In total, Muge was handling 3 key issues at the time of his demise.
One potato, which was basically was an in-house one, was the Katakwa issue. At that time, the Katakwa issue, no bishop in the house at that time wanted to touch that Katakwa issue because it was a hot potato. They even ended up having a hunger strike at all sides, and looking even for the house of Bishop, the then Archbishop Manasseh Kuria, and it appears some of the other bishops were finding it a very hot potato. How do we deal with this matter, which the church had never experienced before? You have a diocese that is looking for recognition, and nobody wants to touch it. But Bishop Muge was able to come out and say, let me hear the voices of the people of Katakwa. So that is the first potato, which was an in-house within the House of Bishops. Number 2 was in 1990 with the clamor for multi-party. When the so-called Saitoti Commission came over here to inquire from the people whether Kenya was ripe for multi-party kind of democracy, it is Bishop Muge's kind of topic that became very key. He talked to people who were surrounded Moi and had actually kept him away from hearing those cries and those challenges that people were facing out there. And Bishop Muge courageously told him, you have a lot of people who have surrounded you, and many were very unhappy about that, particularly within the system. That is one of them, the clamor for multi-party, and the perception that if that multi-party came on, Bishop Muge would have a significant chunk of the people of North Rift probably supporting other voices other than probably that of the president, who was perceived to be their own son. So that is number 2. Number 3 was in 1990, in February, Dr. Abato Uko. His death was a very hot potato. And it is perceived that a number of bishops, including Bishop Muge, knew the details.
Omanyo says it was during that church meeting in Busia that Bishop Alexander Muge declared that he was ready to drop a bombshell that would mark the beginning of the end of his life.
I remember at St. Stephen he pronounced that these politicians are getting too much in the government. Today I'm going to name the people who killed Ouko. I'm going to mention them outside the church. So from there we left, somehow because we didn't want to come back the same route because we knew we were being followed. We decided to take Busia-Kisumu Road. So we drove Busia-Kisumu Road, a little bit isolating ourselves. Out of the convoy, we had about 6 to 7 cars. So when we reached Luanda, we were stopped because there's a roadblock at Luanda. We were stopped by the police. And one of the policemen, was an inspector, I think, he was an officer, spoke to him in Kalenjin. They talked somehow. I didn't know what they discussed. Then all of a sudden, after leaving the roadblock, he changed his mind. We are going to Kakamega. We are not going out through Kisumu, Kapsabet. We are going to Kakamega. That time he was the one driving.
While in Kakamega town, Bishop Muge presided over what would be his last supper with a section of his congregation and friends. His end had come as the clock ticked towards 3:30 p.m. the hour of his death.
When we reached Kakamega, he said he told the other people, let's go to Kakamega Golf Hotel and have dinner, lunch. It was a late lunch, around 2 there. We had lunch and he was talking to us and was encouraging us and, talking about telling the leadership the truth. There's nothing else you have to hide. You tell the leadership the truth.
What followed would change their lives forever. As they left Kakamega for Eldoret via Webuye, they made a switch in the driver's seat. Omanyo, the designated driver, became the passenger on their final stretch.
When we left the Golf Hotel, because he took over the car, because he knew I had to rest, because I was going to drive in the evening to Nairobi. So we stayed back a bit for about 15 minutes. We let the convoy or other cars go. So we stayed a bit, went to Kenya Commercial Bank. There we greeted somebody. And after that, we started driving. He was driving. I was his co-driver. So we were talking as he drove on. We were looking at Busia, how was it, and the crowd and the people listening to the word he was sharing with them and the word of God. And after that, we took off. We were driving a bit fast. We met our convoy at the junction of Webuye Kakamega Road, Kabirengu. So there we left the convoy still. We went ahead of our convoy and were driving a little bit fast. So the minute we reached at Kipsang River and climbed up, as we were seeing just before the junction where we had the accident, a few meters away we saw a vehicle coming in front, a lorry. And this lorry was fast and has put on all full headlights. In no minute, we were hit. Just the time we were seeing what's wrong with that lorry, we were hit. It's around 3:33 to somewhere. It had just been drizzling. So we were hit off the road and we rolled backwards about maybe 100 meters somewhere behind. And the lorry rolled. Had the lorry rolled one more time, none of us could have survived because we were very close. The lorry was upside down. And so I lost consciousness, could be for about a few seconds. I realized we had been hit. I checked on myself, I was okay. I removed my belt. I checked on the bishop. When our vehicle hit him, hit the lorry, the whole part, the frontage part, the steering wheel came on his chest. So I walked through the bonnet because the whole front was smashed. I came out through the bonnet. I realized I can walk. I went on the other side. I started pulling, thinking that I could easily pull the door for him. But that moment, he drooped his head. Then I knew he's dead. And so I went to the road to stop the other vehicles. And when they came in, they realized the bishop was gone.
Having been on the road for about 10 hours with the bishop, Davis Omanyo, who is now a lay canon at ACK St. Matthew's Cathedral, believes the accident was premeditated.
I feel it was a premeditated either accident or somebody thought about it and how it could hit us. And if somebody hit us, they must have been communicating to know where we are, because there are very many special branch people following us. It was a clear assassination, I would say. It's just God who saved me and the two ladies. But it was a clear assassination because why were they following us from morning? I was not injured. I only lost my arm of the coat and a little bit because I had a safety belt. That's only how I could feel the impact with the safety belt. The other ladies were hurt in the face because the front part of the car, after being smashed, the roof was folded into which cut this lady's face. One lady's face was cut, the late Karubo, but Jennifer, who was directly behind the bishop, she broke her leg. because of impact.
For Bishop Alexander Muge, the impact was colossal. He stood no chance to survive and did not utter a single word before breathing his last.
He died on the spot. He died when I'm seeing him. When somebody dies, he drops his head and you know he's gone. I was trying to pull the door so they could come out, but all the steering wheel had banged his chest. So there was no way out he would come out.
Lori ilikuwa inateremka na yeye akipanda juu. Sasa ilimchukulia pande hii ikamrudisha pande wa kishoto karibu kwa mtoni.
Yeye ni wa kwanza kufia hapo. Na wakati sasa alikufia wa kwanza hapo, ndio sisi tukaunda stage kuwa hiyo stage ya jina yake Muge.
Na yeye alitolewa ndani ya gari kama ameshakufa, sio kusema ati kukimbizwa hospitali. Ilikuwa on spot.
I felt pain.
Before becoming a bishop, Alexander Muge had served as an assistant to Provost Peter Njenga at the All Saints Cathedral. Njenga, now a retired bishop, says he tried in vain to get hold of his friend Muge to try and perhaps save him, but unfortunately, he could not get him when it mattered most.
I, for one, tried to call him from that Friday to Tuesday when he died, to tell him I have heard. And I knew, I had known through my connections, I knew that they had already set the trap for him. He didn't take my phone. So from Friday, I called myself. The whole weekend up until Tuesday, he never picked it. I only heard he had been crushed. But I knew, once he gets there, I tried to tell him, please, try to do anything. I would have given him the message. But I never had a chance. He didn't take my phone.
What did you hear? What did you know?
I heard from some of these, what you call, these private calls, hidden calls that call you and codedly give a message. Your friend is in danger. You know, I knew. Two sources told me this. I don't know who they were because I used to receive those kind of messages. I didn't know who they are, but they tell your friend, the game is short.
Esther Jebet and Amon Kimeli are among the 4 children of the late Bishop Muge and Hama Muge, who later died in February 2018. All the 4 siblings were teenagers when their father perished in that road accident.
By the way, on 13th night, we had a very hearty talk with him. I was in the bedroom, he called me, and he was so hearty. I wondered, what's wrong with Dad today? Why is he like this? He was asking me things like, would you like to go to America? You know, we are friends with Hemstone. If you say you wish to go, it will be done. Then I'm telling him I'm not in a hurry. And then he's like, is there anything wrong you feel I've done to you? And I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong. And then he's like, no, you're my firstborn. I'll do anything for you. And I love you very much. Those was his parting shots to me. Then you look at him, he's glowy, he's different. I'm like, this is not what's happening here. And then a friend had called requesting I go and visit. So he talked to Dad, asked for permission. And on that 14th, as he was traveling, me was on my way to Kisumu to visit. So it happened actually when I was in Kisumu.
Dad was he was a critic of the government. And when threats were there to his life, there was no one time he backed down. So for me, I would say he had prepared himself and also prepared us for any eventuality. There was no one time he was threatened not to go anywhere and he backed down. He actually, you issue the threat today, he would be there tomorrow. These were things that we were used to. Threats were always there. We never ever took anything to heart that actually one day it will happen.
At no given time did he really sit us down to tell us such a thing may happen to him. But very often, or more often, he would be prepared, you know. He would, you know, like there were times he would be threatened that they are coming for him, such kind of things. And he would go to the office. He would go and sit there and say he's waiting for them, he's in the office. He would not hide.
Esther says the tragedy ripped her heart, given that previous night, father and daughter had had lengthy heart-to-heart conversation, and less than 24 hours later, the dad was no more.
It was heavy. Yeah, it was heavy. Sometimes it still feels like yesterday. It still feels fresh. When you think about the plans maybe he had for you, and just him telling you that he loves you.
As a man, you know, this is somebody you look up to. When you have a father figure to look up to. Teenage, that is when it is very important, during the teenage period, when you have somebody to look up to, isn't it? Now, unfortunately for us, we lost him when we were teenagers.
Oh, he was very loving, very outgoing, very jovial. He was cool, calm, and collected. With us, he was a father. Out there, he was the bishop. He was this tough figure, a no-nonsense man. But to us, he was a father. We would play with him.
And then he starts hitting you. We were school-going kids. We need to get back to school. Almost, I mean, it was the August holidays. In September, we had to be back to school. My elder brother was doing exams. He was a fourth former. You know, at least Esther was in college. Elizabeth and I were just following each other. So I was in Form 2, she was in Form 1. So you see, now that's going back to school business. The lists that we used to give to Dad, now you see, we are now, it's Mom that we are operating. It's when you start realizing there's somebody we are missing. That's when it starts hitting. Each of us, we dealt with it on our own ways. Sorry, you're taking me. Elizabeth, then she was in Kenya High School. She was, at one point, she was defeated to go back to school. Not because of school fees or anything. It's just she didn't want to be away from home. She just didn't want. Well, for me, I can say of all the children, I was in a day school here in Eldoret, just across. Andrew was in Lenana, doing his fourth. So for him, you know, now he has to keep everything.
So you were the most affected because you were home daily?
I was home daily. So, but we all dealt with this grief on our own ways. Esther was in Kisumu. She was in a college in Kisumu. So, but everybody had their own attachment to Dad.
We thank God for our mother. She was very strong. She saw us through.
Bishop Muge died on the 14th August. His family and the church agreed to have him buried on 22nd August, while the government wanted another date chosen because 22nd August coincided with the commemoration of the late President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's death. And the head of state, Daniel Moi, who would be leading the nation in marking the day, wanted to attend Bishop Muge's funeral.
President asked for another day, but the church and the elders deciding, no, we will go on with this date.
The family and the church stood their ground, declining to move the burial date, forcing President Moi to make other arrangements to go and condole the family. Some government ministers who attempted to visit the home were turned away, since the government stood accused of assassinating the fiery cleric. President Moi went alone. Residents speak of bizarre events during the head of state's visit, catching the mourners by surprise.
By the way, he came quietly.
The president to come here, the things that actually happened in this compound then are things that happen, and sometimes we wonder whether they'll ever be explained. But those are, these are things, we saw them. It was in this compound. The president was trying to lead a prayer, and one of our cockroaches here was fighting him. My dad's younger brother went and took the cockroach away. But as soon as he left it, the cockroach was back. And during that time, the president is praying, And those are events we can never explain.
Was it a cock or just a normal chicken? I can't remember. But it came to the table, just scattering, just playing around. It was removed from there. It came back. And Muze was praying. Yeah. As it made noise. Yeah.
How was that interpreted?
People were just stunned. In fact, people were not closing their eyes. You'd look around and everyone's eyes were just on the ninyo. Was it a jogo or just a cuckoo? I don't know. People are just looking, you'd look around and everyone's eyes are just on it. The way it would almost sound like Mzee was the only one saying amen to his prayers.
When Bishop Muge's body was taken to his home for overnight stay before being moved to Eldoret town for burial at St. Matthew's Cathedral, a similar strange jogo incident would stun the mourners.
Now when the coffin was brought, as it was removed from the vehicle and put somewhere so that people could view, another jogo just went on top and behaved, the way it's staring at Dad like a normal human being. People were just stunned. Yeah. We're just, we didn't understand what was happening. Yeah. It made noise as it went on top of the coffin, and then as it viewed the body, it was silent. So nobody removed it.
And we still have those pictures, where the same cock was on top of the coffin. The pictures are there, they were taken. Of course, at that event, you couldn't take those pictures. The other one of the president and the cock, those ones could not could not be taken.
So what happened to the strange cockerel, or was it a mourning cockerel after its master died?
It stayed until we didn't slaughter it or anything. No. We just let it be. Let nature take its course. We didn't want, now, religiously, what would we do? Try to find questions to answer such a mystery. So you don't want to start wondering to say, tuite wazee tujue nini why this happened.
Consecrated at the age of 35, Bishop Alexander Kipsang Muge met his death at the age of 42, and had he lived longer, would have attained by mandatory retirement age of 65 in 2011. Muge had served for only 7 years and was buried 7 days after his death.
I went to the funeral and I said the same, that this was not what you call a normal road accident. This was assassination. Muge was assassinated. I said that very clearly.
The authorities termed the Kipkaren River tragedy as ordinary accident, and the driver of the lorry, Nikonari Munai Mkoba, was found guilty of dangerous driving and jailed for 7 years, but died in his 5th year while serving his sentence.
Until today, the police have never reviewed their findings. Have they? They have not. Police have not disclosed their findings, their forensic findings. 34 years later. Yeah?
34 years later.
34 years later.
Meetings were held in church trying to say, do we ask that Muge is compensated? But the government said no, because they didn't either accept or deny.
The bishop was laid to rest at ACK St. Matthew's Cathedral in Eldoret town. His mausoleum stands out within the church compound. He died while serving the then newly established ACK Eldoret Diocese, which covered the entire North Rift region. However, his wife Hama, who died in February 2018, was buried at the home. Husband and wife who lived together, now separated in death.
That is also another challenge, you know, as we were young. Maybe if we were asked, would have been of a different opinion. Because now my parents are far apart. Mom is buried at home. Dad is here, far apart. As they've gone before us, we would have wished they be together as they were. But we didn't make those decisions.
The church sat definitely with Mom. They had a meeting and they all agreed that that was the way to go. Yeah. I don't know whether now if the church would rethink it, I don't know.
On Tuesday, 14th August 1990, he perished through a grisly road accident. During his burial, the sermon was from the book of Amos 5, verse 24, which reads, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." Duncan Haemba, NTV, Eldoret.